Time management for music teachers is a conundrum because we are so many different things, aren't we? We are accountants, some of us, if we don't have a separate accountant, and bookkeepers. We are admin staff. We are professional emailers, it feels like. We also have to organize all of our lesson resources and do the lesson planning and communicate with parents about stuff to do with lessons or directly with students. And we have to actually teach too, right? So that last part, that's the non-negotiable. It's the rest of our time. How do we budget the rest of our time to manage it so that we get everything done and we don't feel like we're always working? Because it's so easy for us to do that, isn't it? Does anyone feel like they are constantly working because they work from home? I feel like this got worse in COVID, even for us, as people who normally work from home. Our worlds shrank, right? It got even tougher to separate things. Even though we were teaching maybe in the same space, we weren't going out as much. We didn't have as much going on outside to pull us away from teaching. I know for me, travel was a huge one. If I don't have travel to pull me away from my studio, it's very hard for me to take extended breaks. I take time off, but breaks, those are tough if I don't leave my house. And if there's nowhere to go, it's hard to do that. So was it worse for you? Was it harder to manage your time and still take time off? Or did you find a better balance? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I have a few different foundational elements that I want us all to keep in mind, and then I'd love to do a brainstorming session with you guys to see what ways we can better manage our time as teachers. So my first step for you is to prioritize. For real this time. Did you know that priority used to be, it literally meant it was one thing? I don't think most of us use that word that way anymore at this stage, but that's where it came from. It was supposed to be the one thing, the most important. It wasn't supposed to be a big, giant, long list of priorities. That doesn't count. So when I say prioritize, I actually mean make a list of all of the things you could be doing with whatever given time, whether that's right now or Tuesdays at 2, and actually prioritize the list. If I could only do 3 things, or if I put these things in the order of priority, what comes at the top, and then so on and so forth. Because too often, if you don't prioritize consciously, if you're not careful and intentionally prioritizing, who decides what comes first? The person who shouts the loudest, or the thing that shouts the loudest in your brain. And that's not a useful way to plan your time, but it can end up happening, right? Put your hand up if you struggle to prioritize and actually stick to the priorities. It's a tough one to do, but when you really do it, it's so empowering. And often when you come back to that list later, the big giant list of all the things that you could be doing, this is what I make, by the way, when I feel overwhelmed. I make a list of everything. Okay, these are all the things that are swarming around my brain that I could be doing. And then I prioritize and pick the things that I'm actually going to do. And I put the list aside. It's still there. I still have this list of all the things if I want them. But if you finish the priorities and then come back to the list, what you may find is that some of them don't even matter anymore. They were just noise. They were just nonsense. And you can just cross them off and go skipping along and go play with your dog instead, because they were just mess. And all of us build up these things that seem so important, but they're not. They're just urgent. And to do things that are urgent but not important, I mean, that's not a good way to spend our time, is it? Okay. Next foundation. Pac-Man. Know your vices. What? I don't know why, but when I started thinking about vices and what I wanted to talk about here, Pac-Man just jumped into my head. Oh, Pac-Man, jumping along, or like, what's he doing? Sliding along, I guess, floating along and eating all these vices. Just popped into my head, thought it was a good image. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about understanding the things that distract you and controlling for those. Not relying on yourself to have more self-control or be more deliberate or just be better, right? That's just a recipe for being mean to yourself later. If you have certain things that it is hard for you to manage, in a lot of cases, you should just remove yourself from that situation. Speaking of dogs, if you're training a puppy, a lot of the advice around training them not to eat your shoes or do other undesirable behaviors is just to control their environment. Just put them in a pen. Don't let them have the shoes. It's too hard for them to control themselves, and we all have things where we are like that little puppy, right? So control it. What is it for you? Some common ones are checking your email obsessively, even when there's nothing there. You open it and you like pull down at the top. Is that you? Or do you check Facebook far too much and just scroll through the feed? You don't even have any notifications. You're just reading random Facebook posts from your friends, or maybe it's loads of different music teacher groups that you're a part of, and it's just people venting about various different things. It doesn't particularly improve your mood, and you don't even comment on them, but you're just scrolling. Or maybe it's the same thing, but it's Instagram, and it's a beautiful pictures, and oh my gosh, I wish my life looked like that. What's your vice? It doesn't have to be digital. Maybe your vice is baking. Maybe you distract yourself by doing things around the house. That's a big one for many people at the moment. They get out of work by doing other work that doesn't actually need to be done, like cleaning your fridge or baking scones or something else. I'm not saying don't bake scones. Do that for your own pleasure. And I'm aware I say scones and most people say scones, and let's not have that conversation. But if you want to bake scones, bake scones. But do it as a pastime, as something you actually enjoy, and let yourself enjoy it and decide you're going to do it. Don't think all the time, yes, I am doing this, but I should, in a second, I'm going to make my timetable. I'm going to do it. In a moment, I will. No, just enjoy the task. If you're going to look at Facebook with intention. But know the things that distract you and are vices in the wrong context. What is your vice? What is it for you? Lee said I got her. I hope it wasn't on the baking scones. Because if so, send us some. That's delicious. That's a great vice to have in a lot of cases. But you can see how anything can get in the way and be a distraction rather than a useful activity. Okay, right now. Or back to the universe. What am I talking about here? I mean all those ideas you were scrolling past in your vice a second ago. If it's not for right now, and that doesn't have to mean this minute, but if you can't see in the foreseeable future, this is when I'm going to use this idea, this resource, this book, this whatever. If you don't have a spot to put it in your schedule, just let it float on by you and think, oh, that's lovely, and let it go back into the universe and know that it will come back to you. I'm not normally this kind of, oh, the universe, and I don't mean it like that. I'm not actually that woo-woo. But I do think there's value to thinking of it like this. Just think of these things as floating on by you if this is a problem for you, right? Does anyone know what I'm talking about here? It's that Pinterest post that you open up and somebody's using that pop-it thing and you think that is so cool, and you find a way to save it on your phone and you think about it for hours, but you only have adult students right now and you don't want to use it with your adult students. Well then, just don't use it at all. That's my solution anyway. So is anybody guilty of this? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. It can be really tough to let things go, but if you get in the habit of it, it gets way easier. It's like when I used to have a lot lower of a budget back when I was in college, and I just got myself out of the habit of buying clothes or buying other luxury things. And when you're not in the habit of it, it doesn't even occur to you to do it. It's just that initial building of the habit of You just let things flow by you, and then you know they'll flow back to you later, or there'll be a new, even better idea, because we all have no shortage of ideas right now. That's not what we need. We need time. And my last one, so let's look at the collection together, is systems. Systematizing things is not dehumanizing them. We're all in a very human business, and I don't want to take away from that, and I don't want you to think that I'm saying we shouldn't care about our students or interact with them one-on-one. But what you build systems for is everything else. This is what the course inside Vibrant Music Teaching called Sustainable Studio Systems is all about. It's about building those checklists and automated systems that when you get a new student, I'll give you an example that I'm using a lot right now. When I get a new student, I use a program called ClickUp, which is like Asana, but I prefer it. So I use ClickUp and I duplicate a template task that I have for a new student, and I write the new student's name at the top. So duplicate the task, write Jacinta, and then I just change the top date to Jacinta's third lesson. That's the way my system works. And all the other tasks come into line with when I should do them for Jacinta. So it'll tell me when I need to email the parent with Jacinta's login details for Tanara. It'll tell me when I need to put together her pack with her folder and t-shirt. All of the different things. And it's not just me in my case either. I also have an admin assistant who's going to add her details into a couple of systems we use, like My Music Staff and MailerLite. You see how having that system in place means that I can spend more time and energy on actually interacting with Jacinta and having real conversations with her parents and actually doing my job, the bit only I can as the human. Right? So if there's anything you repeatedly do, even if it's a little bit different each time, please find a way to systematize it. The next time you do it, write down the steps that you're doing, and then you can create a repeatable process from that.